Hi, Daz Walters here at Burfield Gold Lake. Been here for a couple of days and I've got the opportunity to interview Simon Pomeroy from Pallatrax. So I managed to drag him away from his rods, and here's a few questions. All random, people have sent in to me. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask, and nor do I, so here we go. Right, Pom, so we're down Burfield Gold Lake. I've managed to drag you away for a few minutes to answer some questions which I've been sent from all different people. So we've managed to tie you down. And the first one is, what is your first fishing memory?
First fishing memory is standing on Burnside in Scotland. Small burn behind my parents' house. My dad was in the RAF up there, and with the old Woolies kit, trying to take these little sticklebacks. And I can still see it clearly today as, you know, in the full plumage, the big red tummies, these tiny little fish. And that's the first memory, and that was when I was about 4, so a long time ago now.
What is your fondest fishing memory?
I think not knowing these questions that you're going to be asking me, that's probably one of the most difficult things, because I've got so many, from just pure friendships to a lot of the nature aspects. Not necessarily a particular fish I've caught. I've caught some stunning fish over the years, be it sea, game, coarse. I think probably catching 43 tench up at Farrier's a few years ago in 4.5 hours on float fishing tactics, all mint fish. It was just that incredible consistency, red letter day. We actually ended up in the whole session over 36 hours with 134 tench. And it was just, we went to target them, everything came together, and to be able to catch them in that kind of pure way of float fishing, double red maggot, just fishing over a bed of ground bait, that's one of those memories. But there was a lot, you know, so that's the honest truth.
That's a good session though, isn't it?
Oh, it's an amazing session, amazing session.
All right, what is your worst fishing memory?
Oh, I'm not a fan of blanking, so and I've done that over the years. I think, to be quite honest, running fisheries and seeing some of the things that went around the fisheries, and because they're related to fishing, I can remember one lad having the intelligence, in inverted commas, to change his gas canister over a candle. So yeah, you know, he's using the light of these little candles, these tea lights, and he changed his gas canister, and it literally blew up, and he had to go to Oddstock. So there's been some quite deep ones, but as a personal memory for me, you know, I've done all the stupid things of falling in, and you know what most people have done over the years.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. Right then, the next one. What is the best, most useful fishing related item you have ever purchased?
I suppose some of these answers are going to sound contrived, and I didn't purchase it, I developed it, was the Stonze. Okay. I mean, you know, that's been a huge advance to my fishing. I like products of late, more interesting products I've seen. I don't think there's a lot of innovation in the industry, in truthfulness. There's a lot of copying. There's a lot of products that here today, gone tomorrow. You know, they're very, very quick in the industry, and they don't perform. I like things like the Spom. I thought the Spom was you know, I'm a short-range disaster when it comes to spodding. I like spodding particles, and I make up this mix, this sick mix, which is particles and bait really kind of almost fermenting, and putting it in a spod. You just ended up, and we used to call it sick, and I ended up like fishing up at somewhere like Horseshoe and putting out a bed of particle. And as soon as the Spom came on the market, it was like the answer to my prayers. So it's like
a revolution, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's actually, even though I personally believe the vast majority of things that actually really are key is what goes on under the water, so the rig and the bait and all that kind of unobtrusive tackle I've kind of got involved with over the years, but it actually allowed me to fish better, because I could fish more accurately, and therefore undoubtedly actually helped me catch more fish. So I think it's a genuine product.
I think a lot of people would agree with you actually.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the days of the standard spot have pretty, you know, disappeared.
What is the least useful fishing item anyone's ever given you?
Some of the bait I've seen has been shocking that people have tried. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm sure in your little list there'll be the topic of bait, but you know, I think some of the stuff, unfortunately, and it's my opinion, and we're all entitled to our opinions, I think there's a lot of stuff, they're reinventing the wheel. you know, that continuation. I've seen some horrendous rigs. Having owned 2 tackle shops, you get a different insight as well. And you know, the rig when we're carp fishing is the trap to me. It has to be perfect. It has to be like the match angler. It's really the devil's in the detail. And some of the rigs I've seen bought on the market, I can remember some rigs came when the line was, instead of going through the back of the eye, it's gone through the front, so changed the whole dynamic of the rig. And these were on sale. These were by a proper company. So things like that. But you know, I stay clear of all that kind of stuff, as you well know.
Okay, this is an interesting one. Who are the 3 most influential anglers you have met and why?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
That's a good question, that.
Terry Walton.
Okay.
And the reason why is when I was about 12, he was the match star in our kind of pub match team up in Derbyshire, and he really took the time to show us kids how to do things. You know, certainly showed me everything from you know, how to shot floats properly, you know, fish on the drop, understand fresh bait, understand the real dynamic of being unobtrusive as well, you know, the scale down to catch more fish. So he will always sit there as a serious influence. Strangely enough, nobody in my family other than me really fishes to this kind of obsessional level. So outside influences have been pretty much, they're not kind of the famous anglers, if that makes sense. You know, Tony Miles, very good friend, and unfortunately he died last year. He fished with me for 11 years, and the man had an incredible, humble man, but very incredible consistency of catching. And we used to talk a lot together about bait and things like that, so he definitely influences me. And on the bait, I mean, there's you know, one guy I can pick out, Baldy Dave. I mean, he was with me at Paddington when we started the Pallatrax, the company. He was very much alongside me, and his history of bait making for his own passion, his own, you know, people like that. And I learned a lot of him, a lot of the factors that you need to use the high nutritional value ingredients, how to prepare it best, there was no commercialisation of the bait he was making. And I'd like to say that, you know, that's been the continual flow of me. It's not a monetary thing, it's about making a really good bait. So there's 3 people that, you know, spring to mind as you answer that question, but there's others, you know, there's a lot of others, but they're just normal like us. They're just anglers who have helped me along the way, you know, especially in sea fishing, you know, and fly fishing, you know, all these different people. Some, unfortunately, who just have gone in 51 years, they're not there anymore, but they will always be there because of that influence.
What or where is your favourite angling venue or destination, and why?
I like it here on the banks of Gold Lake, on the Burfield complex. You know, this has got some good memories, good banter, good fish. You know, we've been here a couple of days now. We've already had 10 fish in rubbish conditions. But I think it's got to be Horseshoe. I mean, I've got so many fond memories of the Carp Society's lake at Horseshoe. I've caught some of those big, beautiful, scaly mirrors there, which are, I suppose, they're heritage fish. I'm more about consistency in angling, catching. I'd rather catch lots than just one particular big fish kind of thing. That's what rocks my boat. And that's a difficult venue, but we've been there and we've caught a lot of fish. And because I love tench fishing, you know I mentioned the Farrier kind of example earlier, but that as a tench venue, if you get it right, is just amazing. And we've had some outrageous hits there. Fishing deep into the weed, you know, on method balls and one thing or another. So, and also, you know, on my profile picture on Facebook, you know, there's that picture of that huge big,
that's right, that mirror carp,
big mirror, and it's not a size thing. It's certainly the heritage of that fish. It's so old and it's so beautiful. You can't, you know, us as anglers, you can't forget those kind of memories. So though there's lots of venues, there's lots of cracking venues out there, I suppose if you had to put one that will always stick there and I'll always go back, and I get that, you know, when you drive through the gate and you get, you know, I'm here now and I can't wait to get out. And I've also seen and met some fantastic people up there. So, you know, people like Miles and Sabrina, who basically run the society now, I cherish them as really dear friends. So it's got everything for me, that place.
If you could only fish for one species for the rest of your life, which one would it be and why?
Ooh.
Even I don't know the answer to this one.
I probably do, though I've had, like I say, you know, ironically, my favourite species, I would say, is float fishing dusk and first light with a mist on the water, oily water for tench, you know, seeing those fizzes and things like that. That evokes some stunning memories and also, like, that excitement. But I think if you said, right, you've got to, some of the things I've done over the years is like fish the River Dart down on Dartmoor, tiny little streams with really light fly kit, really, we're talking really, really light gear, catching only, you know, tiddly little brownies, and, you know, the fight you get on them, the atmosphere of the venue, things like that. I mean, so, you know, I know it sounds really strange because we're in an era probably of big fish, but we're talking about tiny little wild fish that will never ever grow, you know, that big. And just seeing them come, you know, I've got so many memories of them just coming up and trying to cast in some of these like alleys of wood, you know, trees hanging over the water. It's all really techie, detailed stuff. Could get it right on the spot. And then seeing these little fish come up and just peck your floating, you know, your fly.
Yeah, yeah.
And because you're on such lightweight gear, you actually, it's a bit like LRF fishing, you know, when you can go down to the sea and catch a, you know, a little pollock, and you know you'll get stripped off on their eyes. Get exciting stuff when you're fishing this ultra balanced kit. So, yeah, I think that would be one.
Yeah.
I know that's a really difficult question, to be fair.
Well, fishing's different for everyone, isn't it? Everyone has their own different species, and you know, there's one particular thing that most people find, you know, floats the boat at the end of the day, what they like to do. So everyone's different. Right then, is there one item of tackle that's been invented in the last 20 years and you wish that you thought about it?
Cool.
Stunned
silent.
That's good. I wish I'd thought of that.
Well, I suppose going back to the SPOM, I think that's just a really, really good idea. You know, I mean, you know, I know it sounds like a critique of the industry, and I have to be honest, it actually is. There hasn't been, you know, I've been seriously involved in this industry with fisheries, with retail shops, fish farm, you know, all this kind of different stuff, and there's nothing that has really come out and gone, God, I need to get that. That's going to improve my catch rate. So I can only really give you...
That's a standout one, the SPOM.
The standout one, other than the contrived, you know, some of the stuff I've seeked to develop, because I've questioned so much, because some of the stuff I just don't see the relevance of it. You know, it's more of, you know, I think catching the angler than catching fish, and my sole kind of remit or ethos is to catch fish safely and consistently. So trying to find products that haven't been a case of reinventing the wheel and one thing or another. And I'm not going to suddenly start bringing in, you know, a particular bivvy because it's, you know, it's a nice colour, or you know, there's some really good tackle out there in the industry, some really good kit. On the flip side of it, I don't see a huge amount of innovation, to be fair, and I think that's one thing this industry is, you know, very short of.
How and when did you first get involved with the fishing industry?
Well, it's a bit of a strange one. Fate. Now, I was medically retired from the police, okay, at the age of 30, and the only thing I'd done other than being in the police, and I've been in the police, you know, I did 3 years in Bermuda where I did a lot of boat fishing and one thing or another. You know, I didn't know what on earth to do, and I saw an advert, and I was actually on medical leave, and I was waiting to go to court, and I bought an Angling Times, and I saw an advert for a fishery down in Devon, and I drove down there with my father and my wife and had a look at it, and coming back I thought I'd go and see a friend of mine who owned Paddington Lakes in Dorset, and so I went down and told him about this fishery, and he said this fishery's come on the market. And Paddington Lakes, I suppose going back to that, you know, there's almost a guilt in me, though I've said horseshoe, obviously Paddington Lakes I owned for 9 years, and that invokes huge amounts of memories. That was a 9-year journey, and so I, you know, begged, borrowed, and got family and everything, and we kind of committed. My parents were, you know, absolutely wonderful, and came in on the deal with us, and we bought Paddington Lakes, and I didn't have a clue about it. I didn't have a clue really, 20 years ago what the industry was really all about. How
Did you start from the fresh then?
Totally. It was when I first saw the first 20 years ago. I'd never seen a boilie. I've been really hardcore into my fly fishing and boat fishing. I'd really kind of moved away for a great number of years from general coarse fishing, and carp fishing wasn't really around in the early days. I'm getting on now, and it was it was kind of relatively new in fishing. For the last 30-35 years. So I fell into it, in many ways, and off the back of that and the various things that happened, I then opened a shop up on site, started a fish farm. So it started opening all these different doors for me. Then I started getting involved in different tackle companies, and I've got that kind of inquisitive, question everything, assume nothing kind of mindset. And so I started developing products and then you meet people who can actually help you develop them further, and all those kind of things. So it was literally,
the dream started as a dream then, really.
Yeah, it was. I suppose every angler probably wants to own a fishery, though probably every angler won't know the full ins and outs. It's 24/7, and it comes with a lot of baggage. But so it was kind of a case of falling into it more than ever thinking or preparing to get involved with it.
What's the best and worst parts about owning your own fishery?
For me, it was the whole natural element. It wasn't about the fishing, it was more about the whole package. And to make something and turn something that had really kind of fallen into disrepair, for want of better, the passion had left it, and to be able to go in there and have almost a blank canvas to some degree, and planting the trees and everything that went with it, the netting, the fish farming, meeting all these different people, because it was day ticket water initially, and people came from literally all over. Even in Europe, we got to be very well known as a fishery. We had some very big fish. We had a management plan that made sure the fish were growing healthy and things like that. So the good thing was just, and there should have been, and because we'll bounce back onto the bad things. It was perfection. It was, you're at one in nature. You could go fishing when you wanted. We had a stretch of river there, so I love grayling fishing as well. So we caught some cracking grayling on that, and it was, I suppose, the start of this journey as well. So there's a whole plethora of different things that I would associate with, which was good to owning a fishery. The bad thing was, unfortunately, people. The lack of respect we saw over the years, or something that was so passionate. It wasn't some big money-making machine, and we had all kinds of, I won't spoil the flavour of this conversation, but they were difficult times when you get to get into the police involved with some situations. So unfortunately, there's that. But running alongside it, and I suppose the irony to all this is, why I'm here today is, I had a big fish kill, and that's probably one of the most devastating things to ever have happened to me, full stop. To find all these fish dying, and the realisation is I was part of that problem by polluting the water and some of the things that were going on, unintentionally, but perhaps naively, I suppose. So that was a devastating thing to literally build a funeral parlour of 180 carp and to burn them. Was an emotional thing.
Can we sort of elaborate a bit on that? Because obviously you've just said you've had the dream, you've gone down there, you bought the fishery, and then over a period of time you had the fish kill. Did you find out what caused the fish kill, or?
We got CFAS involved, EA involved. I did everything as you could by the book, but unfortunately there was little kind of research done on some of these fish kills, and they're happening all the time. And really, ultimately, I learned very quickly after this, because I came in I was just Joe Blow. I'd walked in off the straight and bought a fishery, and I thought it would all look after itself. It was wonderful. I didn't appreciate it was like having this big fish tank, and you had to take care of everything on the banks. But the ultimate thing is, a good fishery manager is all about water quality. And the fact is that I didn't regulate the bait in any way, shape or form. So I had one of my lakes was a trout lake. So we were piling in trout pellet, which is really, really bad for coarse fishing, the huge volume we were putting in there. We didn't know, we just thought fish. I didn't know, carp have a digestive tract and they can't have any oil, pellet. It's not anything pellet with a 15% oil content plus is negative for them. And then, you know, you're seeing all these different baits and boilies and particles, and you know, you can imagine getting a washing bowl of it and pouring it all in, and you know, because we were getting really popular, you know, we were getting about 1/4 ton a week over the 3 lakes, was of totally uncontrolled food, which I thought was food going in. There was no regulation in the bait industry, and you know, very much we were guilty of naively, you know, really screwing with the biomass by basically feeding stuff that we never really were in control of. I mean, and the naivety of it, you think about it, we're probably as an industry the only area in looking after animals, so if you want to call it farming or husbandry or whatever you want to call it, where we're not in control of the food. You know, would you go up to
livestock, all over livestock?
Yeah,
it's controlled, isn't it?
Everything is regulated, and I think personally, I'm a firm believer that our bait industry should be totally regulated, like the koi market and things like that. And I think it will be. You know, certainly where there is more and more water quality problems every year, and a lot of it is being attributed to all of these different baits, and nobody knows the true ingredients. Yeah. There's, you know, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but there's good baits out there, and there's probably going to be bad baits out there. And certainly some of the stuff I've seen on the market, which has got zero, you know, nutritional value, it doesn't break down and doesn't feed the biomass and things like that. With the amount of bait we're using in the modern kind of sport, you think back in the day it was a couple of bits of bread and some cheese and a cube of luncheon meat kind of thing, and you know that, you know, we've got small waters where we've got huge volumes of baits going in. Without being regulated, and not regulated, ironically I suppose, by the farmer, being the fishery owner, fishery management. Are they actually really thinking about, you know, what the fish are doing, or how it's affecting their water quality?
Okay, well, to follow on from that, how did Pallatrax, the company, form?
Well, basically, I sat back as soon as I had that kill and said, what can I do to never ever have that happen again? And you know, my experience was growing. I was meeting more people, and basically I didn't want to become kind of this disciplinarian kind of figure, but I developed a bait company so to become a management tool. So you come to the fishery, we could offer you a superior bait, and when you used it you were catching a lot of fish because the fish had enabled it and understood it as a food source, so you were on with a good shout of catching. And for me it was perfect because you're actually there feeding, you know, the fish, but also the fish weren't on the bait, for, you know, they were full in essence. The biomass would then thrive on it, so it was almost like fertilising. So it was totally, as far as I could, sort of win-win situation, a win-win to, you know, I didn't ban everybody's bait or anything like that, but the fact is, because we were all catching on the bait, you know, the angler was quite receptive to saying, well, I'm up for that as well. And so it was genuinely designed not to do what it's now doing, and not to have taken me even where I am today with the company, but it was designed purely as a fishery management tool where I knew the ingredients, I knew, because we were making it all, we were sourcing it all, we knew everything about the bait, and people were using it, and I think one of the reasons Pallet became so popular because the catch rate and consistency of catching on these. And what happened then is people would go back to their own fisheries, and that's how it kind of organically grew. But the whole point of it, Pallatrax started, which was, and Pallatrax is Pallington Lake Attraction Baits. You know, that's why, you know, that's where the name came from. It's a made up name in essence. But
it all started from that fish kill,
It all started
really?
from, unfortunately, that fish kill, and we are where we are.
When did you decide that the company would be based around a holistic approach to both fish welfare and the environment?
I mean, that's, you know, I think, you know, the fact is we developed for that. It was all about the environment. You know, when not easy your business, but as anglers and as fishery managers, you've got duty of care anyhow. I mean, you know, and as a pure businessman, you want to make sure your livestock is fit and healthy and all those kind of things. But it's always been my kind of journey. I've always looked at, I think in this day and age anyhow, the environment is being seen more and more. You know, we've got a terrible habit of humans of destroying the environment.
We're getting more aware now that
we are, and pressures and focuses, you know, whether it's in our food or whether it's in whatever areas, you know, plastics in the seas, all these kind of things are kind of now showing themselves. But I think having had that fish kill, having realised you could actually do something positive out the back of it, everything was just win-win. And why would I want to upset the balance of my fishery? Why would I want to sell poor product to customers? You know, none of it was. I'm not focused on money. You know, I've got a massive amount of passion, and at the same time, I think if you do it right, cream always floats to the top. So yeah.
So the core idea behind Pallatrax is environmental friendly and fish friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also consumer friendly. I think I've been involved in this industry a lot of time, and I see the angler somewhat at the bottom of the pile. You know, there's a lot of things, especially profit. You know, profit's not a rude word in business, but I think you should always have it, and the customer there alongside. So the customer's never being ripped off. The customer's being looked after at every point, and so it was a case of, you know, the perfect scenario.
One of Pallatrax's core range of products are the Stonze weights. When did you first decide to use a stone as a weight, and how did this develop into producing them for retail? So this is your first product.
Well, the baits came first. A lot of people don't realise that. You see, the baits was the cornerstone and the platform of the company.
Right.
And then having the shops, I could start getting introduced to different people and looking at different products and seeing, you know, the new trends coming on the market, and not necessarily agree with a lot of them. Certainly, the fact is that, you know, when I mentioned Terry Walton earlier, I mean, one of the things you really, really reinforced into us youngsters that, you know, to scale down, the Matchman scales down on everything. You know, the line, the hook to elicit more bites. Yeah. This industry, as it's become more monetized, as it's become a bigger beast, the terminal tackle has gone, ironically, the opposite way.
Yeah.
And everything's scaled up, and there's kind of the argument put out there that, oh, don't worry, we've painted it green, the fish can't see it. And if you study fish biology, it's much more deeper than that. It's all about what they sense, not what they see. And there's a whole array of other factors that come into it. But the thing is, I'm a real, as you know, I fish the method. When I'm tench fishing, the carp fishing, all those kind of things, I'm fishing the method. You know, I design these method mixes, you know, with minerals and vitamins and, you know, all kinds of holistic kind of things that induce fish to feed. And the trouble is, we used to use tiny little feeders. Then it became bigger and bigger, and big lumps of plastic and lead and things like that, sitting right next to my hook bait. And people were saying to me, oh, the method blows really quickly. And I in my opinion, the method blows if it's poor ingredient and the fish don't relate to it. But also, when it breaks down, there's a great big, obtrusive kind of man-made beast sat right next to your hook bait. And it was kind of thinking, how do I get over this? I still want to, you know, I'm now I've got a bait company, I'm making all these things, I'm sitting there like a mad scientist developing, you know, this, that and the other. And how can I transport, knowing that a fishing weight is a weight, it doesn't have to be made of lead, I believe it shouldn't be made of lead. You know, there's a lot of non-toxic options, and that's a whole other story. But the fact is, my lakes were a gravel pit. Everything was stones, and I drilled a hole in the stone, and
kind of made sense.
But the first night we used it, we caught 16 fish, and it was like, you know, is this something? And then as we started really kind of thinking about it, it's like, hang on, so you're suddenly taking away the larger piece of terminal tackle, which fish can sense for a whole load of different reasons. And just using a natural stone, and it does the job of a weight. You know, people say, you know, some people said they don't cast. Well, you've proved that well and good by hitting the ranges you've hit. But of course they do. It's a weight, and at the end of the day, it's a natural weight. So again, it was that inquisitive mind thinking what else you can use. And don't get me wrong, I never. Ironically, because the stones are patented, it says Simon Pomeroy is the inventor of the Stonze fishing weight. Now, I actually, in some ways, find that a bit of a crazy kind of thing, because for centuries people have been using stones as fishing weights. So, you know, it certainly wasn't my idea, and I can't claim to it. I suppose that all I can claim to it, if not that I'm politically interested in it, is that I bought something to market it and finessed it and started using it and created a whole fishing system around it. But it was just by looking all the time for those edges and thinking, well, I can use a stone, and then we just realised the stone was porous, so we could flavour it. Then we use, you know, all these different things that we've done to, you know, in all honesty, again, going back to that base philosophy of catching more fish safely.
What was the first bait you ever produced?
Poms.
This is the apple one you told me
apple,
about.
walnut, clove essential oil on a milk protein base. And it sold horrendously because basically people didn't like the colour because it was like almost a luminous green. Ironically now, if you see, you know, but it was, you know, it's still, people still ask for it now. When are you going to bring it out again, Pom? But the trouble is that I blend all the flavours together. We make everything from scratch, and one of the flavour houses is no longer in existence. So trying to replicate the flavour and things like that. But I'm sure one day it will rear up again, and it was a hugely successful bait for us down at Paddington. So yeah, Poms.
Well, I have a question here which I think I know the answer to, but what is your favourite bait you've ever produced and why?
Strange you to say, what's your answer then? Well, you said you didn't think you know the question.
Well, I think you're going to say I don't have a favourite. They're all designed to do it for a purpose.
And I think you're right. I think you're right. But if you said nowadays to me, what is the... I have, I suppose, developed it or whatever, is the hydro range. The fact is that you can get snails in that solid format, still with 60% of their original protein, put them in water and they rehydrate, and if you put a flavour or a colour, they'll suck all that in with it, and they're so diverse. So you know you've got a really holistic base, you know, of natural ingredients filled with things that fish need within their diet. And so hydra, I think, is a really exciting bait. I suppose the bait that has consistently caught fish, and they all have, I mean, I'm a real fan of multi-worm. I mean, it smells horrible. People say, oh, it's not going to catch fish, it smells awful, but it's pedigree of catching, though it's probably our most underused bait. But yeah, I'm a great fan of being able to chop and change, you know, like the fly angler, the match angler, predator angler, having that kind of diverse difference. I'm never ever, you know, I think it's a flaw, to be fair, when somebody says, look, you know, this year I'm on bait X, and you know, I'm not saying it's not a bad bait or a good bait or whatever, but the fact is they have no other choices if they just stick to that one bait. I think hydra gives me a lot of different, I can flavour it and attract it. I've got friends in Holland that, you know, dissolve minamino, betaine in water, you know, all this kind of stuff, and it allows you to bespoke a hook bait, and I think that's something that is very difficult, especially, you know, snails, and it's like a part of their diet anyhow. So probably hydra, but there's lots of other things going on around it.
Okay. The vast majority of boilers are round. Some are dumbbells, but you mainly produce squabs, which are pillow shaped. Why is this?
I haven't fished on round bait for 15 years, and the reason is, as soon as I started the bait company, we bought the rolling tables, you know, in the early days before the machines. Yeah. And you were restricted by what the rolling tables did. They designed your bait shape for you, and basically it's the easiest shape to do in mass production. You then go on to where I am now with the machines. You know, round baits are only round because of the economy as such, or the monetary element of it. You can make them much quicker, much more efficiently. I mean, squabs take me, I would say, 3 times longer to make than a round bait. So financially, it's not a good thing. Yeah. But the design of a squab is, you know, you've got the 4 corners, so when the fish sucks it in, it oscillates when it comes out. I mean, people forget that a round bait, like you think of the front of a big ship, the front of a submarine, the front of a torpedo, it's round because it displaces water really quickly. So when a fish spits it out, there's nothing to hold it back in, and it comes out at velocity. So, you know, it was designed, people have said to me, oh, because of throwing sticks. And it's like, well, nobody invented a throwing stick and think, well, what should we do now? Oh, we invented bent range. You know, they you know, it's
throwing sticks come after, don't they?
Yeah, it's the chicken before the egg kind of thing, isn't it? So, you know, we know that fish learn by association. Everybody basically around was fishing, you know, this kind of one point view, you know, of a round bait. Well, I know in all the other areas of fishing I've done, diverse kind of shapes and sizes and things make a really different. I can't give you another area within fishing where a round bait is actually used. I mean, and I believe that is, you know, puts a massive question mark over round bait. I think at least the squabs give you another option. Yeah. That's basically, I think personally, it gives you a far better option, because I say it's very anti-eject. Everybody else is fishing around bait. You know, are these bigger fish that never get caught very infrequently? I believe they're that sensitive to so many things. why would I be fishing the same as what everybody else is doing? And to be quite honest, you know, blanking an awful lot. So
percentages then, every little percentage helps, doesn't it?
Everything I've done is trying to load the odds on my side to catch fish. And like I say, it has to have that holistic, safe approach about it, you know, from core ingredients and the environment in general. But like I say, I know as a manufacturer of baits, I'm restricted not by design to using a round bait, but by the fact that machines make it round. That's not a good enough reason for me to be fishing something that's round.
What are your general thoughts about the modern bait industry, both in the UK and abroad?
I think we need to be regulated. You know, we're putting bait in volume into water courses, and we don't know what's in it. I mean, I know there's some horrendously cheap baits out there where you can go and buy them for, you know, less than £1 a kilo. From a kind of manufacturer's point of view, you buy them from these white label companies, stick your own badge on, and you're selling something that has really got minimal of any protein, full of really high levels of synthetics. Again, made from a financial point of view. Of course, in business, you know, we're there. We have to make money. You know, you wouldn't be doing it. But I think now you've got a situation where there's an awful lot of bait that has very little protein, as I said, full of synthetics, that as a fishery owner and manager, do I want that being thrown in my waters in huge amounts? Personally, no. You know, it goes back to why Pallatrax started. So I think there's some great baits out there, great bait companies doing it for all the right reasons, and then I think there's another element of it that is very focused on money, stripping out ingredients to literally produce a round ball with flavour and colour, and little of anything else.
So what would you say to anglers who choose their bait by price point? You know, try and get the cheapest they can.
I think it's a good question, because what it does, it opens up a kind of a whole kind of different understanding of bait. If you go back to when we were first developing baits, and long before I was it was all about HMV, high nutritional value. So people weren't monetarising it, they were thinking, right, how can I make a good bait? And they were expensive to produce. But they were produced and with the HMV element of it to catch more fish.
Yeah.
You were, you know, adding expensive attractants, putting proteins in there that would attract fish and keep fish feeding, you know, pre-baiting, all that lot. As the industry's grown, there's an element of it that's just producing a shape, but it's totally disregarding the HMV element of it. And if you look at areas like match fishing is a great one. You know, the match angler, the successful match angler, he's obsessed about the quality of his bait, not the volume of it. I mean, I've gone to shows when I've seen 25 kilo sacks of boilies for £20. So, you know, that's selling it to the consumer. Yeah. So you can imagine it's probably it's only costing £4 or £5 to actually produce. What can be in it of, you know, how can anglers have the confidence? I'd rather fish on one single bait than a great big bag of stuff that actually could potentially be really negative to you and the environment, but certainly to you as an angler, because at the best, it's only going to be a lure. The fish are going to pick it up out of curiosity, because they won't eat it because it's not food. And I think, again, when people say baits blow, I think when a fish eats something, it expends energy. So it can't eat something and lose weight. So very quickly, they're incredibly sensitive creatures to their environment, you know, focused totally on naturals. What we're doing is bringing something unnatural into their environment, expecting it just because we've been told it's bait, that, oh, they're going to eat it. Well, what happens if they don't? I think that's the question in a lot of things. What happens if that isn't correct, if that isn't true?
Well, it's been proven a few times with lakes that have been drained down and they found rotten or...
Oh, it's horrendous.
At the bottom of it,
I mean, if you look at the volume of bait, like I say, going back to the old days, you might add a bit of some casters and maggots and bits and pieces. What you've got now is you've got a tonnage going in, and we're talking thousands of tons, not a few tons. And like I say, people are dropping lakes and they're telling me it's like hundreds of thousands, because there's all these baits there that basically are rotting down, causing real substrate water quality problems, basically because they've got no food content. So the fish aren't eating, the rest of the biomass aren't interested in it, they're full of synthetics and preservatives, so it sits there and rots. And that's something that I think we need to address as an industry, we need to address as anglers, to be, you know, more people need to speak out and say, look, you know, we need to regulate this, we don't want these problems.
Well, this can contribute to fish kills, can it, at the end of the day?
As I said, you know, as a water owner, fishery management, your key first port of call is water quality. If you've got good water quality, you'll have a good fishery.
Yeah.
Everything will thrive. Now, the only way you'll tip that balance is if you introduce something as an act of God. So if you're going to put in, like I had at my fishery, a week, 1/4 of a tonne of something, if you kind of, like I say, liquidise that, would I let somebody come up with 1/4 of a tonne of liquid and have poured it in my lakes? But I was actually doing that, but I didn't see it. I couldn't understand it. You know, it didn't I just didn't twig. And then when you bring all that together, and it's all different ingredients, it's different pellets and ground baits and this, that, and the other, mix it all up into a big, like, you know, vat of food, and it's no surprise it caused me problems.
We are renowned for being very blinkered in the UK, and believe we are the forefront of everything, including angling. What areas of our sport do you see our foreign cousins throughout Europe being ahead of us in the game?
Well, only recently, literally last week, I was asked to write a 2-page, I was interviewed, a 2-page interview for Angling International, which is probably the world's premier trade magazine. It's an international trade magazine, and that was actually in regards to lead. And, you know, the fact is that I've been kind of championing we should go non-toxic. I know there's an element of people out there saying, oh, you're only saying that, you know, one particular well-known lead manufacturer's come out and say, oh, you're saying that because you want to make a load of money on your Stonze weights. And it's like, well, hang on a second again, what if that's not a true statement? It's an assumption, and I can assure you that's not. You know how difficult these stones are to make, how much they cost us, and the passion to get that product to market. And only this month, Holland have actually come out and said they're now looking to phase lead out. So
that's a big statement, isn't it?
That's a massive statement, and I think it's the right statement, because look, you've got companies like Dinsmore's, UFOs. I'm the first to shout out about non-toxic. We use the stones because they're natural. It doesn't, you know, from an angling tool, it doesn't matter whether they're made out of lead or another man-made, because it's still a man-made creation going into a natural environment. So the stones are so unique, but there is plenty of other fishing weights out there that are inexpensive, but the industry is fixated on lead because it's so cheap, and that's it.
Talking about the stones again, what do you say to people who say that they're too big compared to a lead? What's your reply?
Again, and it's simply put, again, you know, we're looking out this lake, it's a small gravel pit, there's big stones, big little stones, fat stones, thin stones, big rocks, boulders, everything, you know, all this kind of stuff, part of nature. So the smallest lead is always going to be more out of tilt within nature than the larger stone. Yeah. The stones are about twice the mass of a lead. You know, I actually think having studied the density of lead, it's actually a negative density as well to us as fishermen. It gives really poor bite indication, sinks into silt and weed. You know, I think that's a negative. That's one of the things I've come to appreciate about the stones, is the fact is they will settle on silt, they'll give you better presentation, you know, all these kind of things that a lead potentially has, you know, that element of it's negative in its density, you know, but we're only using it because the industry forces us to use it because it's a cheap metal, even though it's toxic, to actually mould into a shape and all the different array of shapes and one thing and another. Hopefully, you know, with Holland leading the charge, and it's not just in Holland, to be fair, having been privy to some of this stuff, you know, it's going to go across Europe.
There's places in America already, isn't there?
In America,
States,
you know,
America banning it.
You know, we won really big. Actually, one of my proudest moments in business. We're the only British company, to ever win Best New Product at ICAST, which is the biggest trade show in the world, held in Las Vegas. And we trundled over to Las Vegas like you do little old Pallatrax, and we won this award because they got it straight away. The American angler got it. It was, you know, it was literally, we get this. We understand that it does the same job, and all its, you know, the benefits that are attributed to it. Lead over there literally comes with like a cigarette packet warning saying, please wash hands after use, causes brain diseases, cancers, birth defects. You know, and so many national parks, California, places like, you know, they're banning it for all the right. You know, lead's been banned in everything. Ironically, fishing is one of the last few things where somebody can literally go and physically handle lead on a consistent basis, and I think that's going to change.
How, if at all, do you think the change in media power, moving from the physical written word to online platforms, will affect both the angler and the industry?
I think it's massive. I think it's a huge thing that's happening, and I think it's gradually came up with it. We you know, several years ago we had more fishing magazines that were influencing anglers, and a lot of it through paid advertising, as they've fallen away, I think for a number of reasons. Obviously costs reduced, things like that have some bearing, but also social media has the ability to let people really communicate amongst themselves. And so with the magazines, people didn't buy into the magazines. The content, we're anglers, did we buy magazines?
Once in a while?
But the content was the same. It was like you buy our magazine A and you'd read it, and go to magazine B and it was basically the same content. It wasn't teaching us anything new. And I think en masse we started becoming more cynical. And with the advent of social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all these things that I'm far too old to understand, but they have huge influences. And I think now we're seeing it ourselves as a company. One of the things we've always struggled with, because the magazines didn't embrace what we were doing, we're called disruptive technology. That sounds highfalutin, but we're going against the grain.
Yeah.
But we're going against the grain not to be bloody minded, but to basically, because it's the truth. We can see the flaws, we're addressing those flaws. Changing away from the written print to this level playing field for all of us now, you can actually push your story out, and that's radically changing the shape of Pallatrax, both in the UK and certainly internationally. And I think it's just opening up the whole field again. People are able to question things, see things, hear about things, and I think it's going to radically change the industry. Because over the next 5 years, you'll see massive changes.
Okay. If you could change 3 things today across the industry and freshwater fishing as a whole, what would they be and why?
Regulation of bait to make sure it's a positive for the environment on all fronts.
Yeah.
Banning of lead for all the reasons you should be banned, nothing to do with the Stonze or Pallatrax, but the common sense. I mean, I actually despise this kind of trend of dumping lead. I think it's absolutely madness. I think, first of all, it contravenes the Water Resources Act of 1991, plus it contravenes common sense, plus it contravenes basically the Litter Act. We're throwing something, a toxic product, and also I'd love to see harmony within the industry. There's too much backbiting, there's too much stabbing, because we should all be joining together to, this is a wonderful sport. I've got so many, like you, like everybody we've got all these cherished memories. It's such a big part of our life, and with the Angling Trust and the EA, and they need to bond with the industry, who needs to then bond with the angler. We don't want, we're paying licence fees at the moment. We're not even sure why we've been paying licence fees. There's a lot of things going. So if we can create some kind of harmony and then focus on moving the industry forward in a positive way, especially like bringing more women into the sport, bringing more kids especially. I get horrified when I go to the shows and you see a handful of kids wandering around. Disabled anglers, it's massively therapeutic for people like PTSD, all these kind of, mental and physical disabilities. If we were coming together as one, and we had a regulatory body overviewing what we did for all the right reasons, I think the sport would have a future. I think seeing the lack of children,
it's worrying.
It's a real worry. It's a worry. Forget I'm involved in the industry. That's one worry if you want to put it from a commercial point of view going forward. But I worry for the sport in general. Where are we going to be in 20 years' time? I've got 3 young lads, love them to death. They would actually go fishing with Dad if I actually went fishing, I suppose, but they are fixated on Fortnite or blowing up zombies or things like that. They're not like us kids where we used to get out and do all this kind of stuff. There's so many other distractions. I think we need to refocus on what a wonderful kind of pastime it is and somehow get that back out there.
If you could go back and change one thing in the industry, what would it be and why?
I think short term, it would be able to go back and actually, before the mass production of bait, regulate bait
from the start.
From the start, yeah. I think that's the problems I see with water quality and also angler dissatisfaction. A lot of people aren't satisfied and they don't possibly even know why they're not catching a lot of times. But if you're fishing on something that isn't actually a food source or has passion and kind of ingredients and all these kind of into the mix, I think we're a poorer place by not regulating. And I don't think anybody ever thought, back let's just say in the 80s, that the market would turn so massively and are going away from a little pouch of bait, you know, some maggots, some worms, some sweet corn, bits and pieces like that, to suddenly going fishing with 20, 30 kilos of bait, which is, you know, it's so alien, and I don't think anybody has seen. It's almost like crept up on us, and suddenly we've got this huge industry of bait, and it's not regulated, and I don't think that's right. And I could potentially personally lose out as well if I was regulated. I might have to stop. I don't think so, because I've kind of, the devil's in the detail. I've drilled down on so much regulation. Go back, if we went back and we could see what was going to happen with the industry, people should have been more focused on what these baits were being made of and what would actually happen if we were putting them in mass into water systems. And I still, to this day, you know, at the moment I'm trying to talk to CFAS and EA and one thing and another about my concerns, because they're genuine concerns. You know, we should all be concerned about it, because I think bait, unfortunately, is one of the things, a bit like dumping lead. It's out of sight, out of mind, and we don't see what it's doing within the environment. So I know that's going to be political. Some people will kind of condemn that attitude. I don't care. You know, my emphasis as an individual and as a company is actually water quality, you know, alongside customer satisfaction and alongside innovation. If we all have to stand back for a moment, become regulated, really have clarity to what we're doing, it can only be a good thing.
Could you tell me a bit about Team Pallatrax, which has been set up? What makes it so unique and why you wanted to create this initiative?
I think going back to those days of me being a kid, and we were all helping each other, we were all communicating. I think, you know, one thing we all know nowadays, it's not just in fishing, you know, things become so fragmented, you know, where people can bond and learn off each other it's like, you know, texting and things like that. The idea was always to be able to create a group of passionate anglers. It's not exclusive, it's inclusive. You don't have to be Pallatrax through and through kind of thing. And where we can enjoy, we do the fish-ins, you know, we get to meet each other, we're talking all the time on these, you know, social media tools. We're communicating, we're helping each other, we're answering questions. I just think it's kind of, you know, again, going back to that community spirit that fishing always was, trying to embrace that and bring it back into it.
How could you see the team developing over the next couple of years?
I get so excited. You know, we've got people as far away as California, into Canada, all the way through Europe, people who are gravitating towards what we're doing because they're enjoying it. It's not some big con or with some big hidden agenda. It's basically a nice place for people to come, be part of, feel part of. There's no rank structure. There's nothing like that. There's no hate or, you know, it's just about literally embracing what angling's all about. And you know, when we did Horseshoe, 50 of us at Horseshoe, you know, a heritage water, we all just wanted to go and fish there. I know some of us have fished there a lot. A lot of the people that turned up had never fished there. It was a great thing, and the fact is that what I see now as the team's grown, people are doing their own thing, they're meeting up with new friends, they're fishing together, they're enjoying all these different things, and it's really become very special.
Do you have any big plans on the near horizon that you can tell us about?
I think the plan is that we're just going to grow Pallatrax. I mean, we're enjoying it. We're all enjoying it. It's a great journey. It's an exciting journey, and yeah, there's lots of products. You know, as we build our infrastructure, you know, I've designed that sitting on the back burner. Not just bait products or terminal products, other things that, you know, I've looked at and questioned. So I think it's a blank canvas for Pallatrax. We're growing in all areas. I want to keep that growth slow. I want to keep it, you know, us enjoying it. But at the end of the day, I know we have the potential to be a serious brand leader. We've certainly got the products. We've got the pedigree of products, the catching. Look at us here. You know, shocking weather, 48 hours, but we still had 11 fish. You know, we do have fish catching products, and I think the plan is now is just to tell more people.
So something that Pallatrax is keen to embrace is naturals. Can you explain to me the reason behind this?
I think it's a massive thing that's basically been overlooked. I think as the industry's progressed and things have changed, the dynamics have changed towards more man-made baits. We're specifically now talking about carp fishing, I suppose, because the irony is in all other areas angling, natural baits are either replicated or actually used. Why aren't we kind of embracing what fish need in their diet, not what we think they need. There's two. There's there's similar statements, but massively poles apart. By developing and embracing natural elements, have definitely given us a supreme edge. It's expensive stuff to kind of incorporate, especially when the levels that change the if you want to call them the bite rates. You're using real pure ingredients, natural ingredients. When we're talking naturals, we're talking literally the bugs and the insects, and there's thousands of different waterborne species of fly in this country. Somebody was telling me how true this is. It's very difficult because every water's changed, but in some waters you can get up to 4 ton of natural food per acre. And when you think of all the snails or the water flies,
Mussels.
It goes on and on. If you study entomology, I like entomology. I think it's come off the back of fly fishing. It's incredible what lives in these waters. I mean, it's not just bloodworm, it's not just the odd snail. It is literally thousands of different species of incredibly nutritional, highly nutritional food value to the fish. In the summer you'll see fish just cruising around, and we mustn't forget they're cruising around in a pea soup of protein and calories, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's like every time you breathe in, you're taking in food. The water is their air, if that makes sense. And so as they're swimming through their air, it's laden with food sources, the daphnias and all the different things that are cracking off. And so they're literally swimming in and they're full. That's why it's very difficult in the summer when there's so much natural food source. They literally don't need to feed a lot of time because they're actually feeding all the time, inadvertently, I suppose. So what we've done is looked at all these different areas, looked at all the different natural insects we can source and bring in and produce and put within our bait. And like I say, like I mentioned the hydra earlier, I think it's just a massive edge. Well, I know it's a massive edge. I think the best example last year, I was over in Belgium. I fished a lake for 24 hours. I fished the brown snails on the Stonze system as such, with the stones, the steam link, hook link, but the brown snails, which I'd rehydrated in jungle flavour, which is tiger nut, peanut and coconut, I had overnight, or in that 24 session, I had 43 carp up to mid-30s, but I caught the same sturgeon 15 times, and every one of those fish was caught on a brown snail. That's just an incredible catch rate, an incredible success rate. And I think when more and more anglers realise there is other options, especially these natural options, it's a devastating approach. And it's a bit strange that the industry has kind of moved so far away from it, because we were always brought up on these natural baits. And again, so I suppose really turning full circle, we've come back as a company, we understand, the effectiveness of, let's call them the man-made baits. Yeah. But I certainly have never ever forgotten, because of my sea fishing and game fishing and all these other things, we're replicating and using natural baits, and by incorporating those into our carp fishing and our modern trends, you're dovetailing, you're bringing two good things together, and it can only be beneficial. And so naturals is a key part of what we stand for as anglers, a key part of what we stand for as a company, and it's got massive scope to go forward. And I'm always looking to source and looking to produce baits that incorporate this natural food source. Like I say, it's what a fish requires in its diet. It's actively hunting all these kind of things. So if you use those in a bait format, like we do in all these other areas of the sport, we've got every reason to succeed. And I'm giving you examples. I'm not here to show off about my fishing. I fish very much myself. I enjoy the whole aspect of angling. The fact is that it's just such an important kind of story, and it's like going back again to the catching all those tench in that session. That was all maggots. We know these baits work, so incorporate them within your approach, your baiting approach and things like that. You only have to benefit, and it's an incredible edge.
So you brought the new Pallatrax grips hooks out for a reason. What was that reason?
You said a bit ago about what we've got planned for the future, and I think that's a massive part of my plan. The grips is a third design. You've got barbed and barbless, and the grips is actually a third standalone disruptive technology again. What can I do? I developed it off somebody else's design. It wasn't something that I invented. Somebody else invented the kind of these little grooves where, on the inside of the point. Developed specifically for sports fishing. What you've got is a hook. We can have any hook pattern, and you've got these tiny little grooves which are actually impregnated on the back of the point of the hook as such, where normally a barb would be, or that it would just be barbless. And it's also with a more expensive manufacturing technique called a cutting point. So it's extremely sharp. And these again about bringing those edges. One of the things we've always concerned ourselves with barbless hooks is the fact is that you get amount of mouth slippage. So these little grooves, when you pull into the fish, the flesh sits in these grooves, and as soon as the pressure is released, they just come out. Again, going back to that kind of holistic approach, we're looking to minimise mouth damage and things like that. You know, barbed hooks, you know, a lot of fisheries don't allow barbed hooks for a lot of, you know, sensible reasons. Most fisheries look at barbless, but there's always been that complaint of slippage. This alleviates that. As you see, all these fish we're catching, you know, they literally, I mean, to be fair, a lot of times the hook actually comes out in the net. So it's a great thing for fish safety, but it's a great thing to have this super sharp hook, which gives you, you know, let's be honest, there is that amount of, or lack of confidence sometimes in using barbless, thinking the fish is going to drop off. Well, this gives you that next dynamic of where you keep that pressure on, that will lock in there solid. And so you've got a super sharp hook available now in, you know, the wide gate pattern and the straight point. We also do the catfish hook. We've got a load of plans to bring out a lot of different popular patterns with that grips. And again, from an angler confidence point of view, I have never seen a hook that comes straight out the packet, which literally is so sharp. I mean, I find it a bit ironic, I suppose, that, you know, there's hooks out there, you buy the hooks, and then you've got to go and buy a little file and file them off and things like that. It's like, you know, I look at it and think it's a bit like buying a car, and every time you use it, you've got to pump the tyres up. You know, I think if a hook comes out the packet, it should be perfect. And you know, I'm a total convert over to those hooks. I believe in them so much. I believe I get more pickups, you know, using the squab as the anti-eject, but also having that sharp point that takes that initial purchase, that initial prick that starts the whole process off. It really, my confidence is so high on them. And to be fair, you know, alongside Stonze, it's our most popular product internationally now. I think once you use it, you've got a hard job going away from them. They really are revolutionary.
Right, Pom, thank you for the interview. Thanks for your time. I'm sure we'll have more questions going forward in the future.
Thank you, and happy birthday.
You're welcome.
As it happens.
Thanks very much.
21 again.
Yes, I wish. Thank you.